Well, welcome to another episode of Cranes and All, and proudly sponsored by All Cranes in Penrose. And I'm in Wellington on board the Hikitia, which is a ship with a crane on it, a ship crane. And I'm going to talk to a few of the guys that, well, the volunteers that keep this thing going, and I talk to the man who owns it, and look at how this whole thing operates. So let's get started.
The Hikitia was built in 1926 in Scotland by Fleming and Ferguson.
Fleming and Ferguson.
They were a shipyard that built dredgers, cranes, barges, that sort of thing, you know, workboat basically. Although they did build a few warships during the war and various other things. Anyway, she was built in 1926, sailed from Glasgow on September the 21st, I think it was, 1926, and arrived in New Zealand in Wellington on December the 21st, 1926.
So she's
Steamed out
herself,
under her own power, just as you see her now, except they'd have had cables bracing the crane. I think there were 10 altogether, and stools under the corners of the crane machinery.
Just to keep it stable.
To keep it, stop it moving around too much. Although they still had to do some repairs in Tahiti when the deck was cracking around the base of the crane.
Would they have foreseen that? Well, probably not.
Quite possibly they'd have expected some damage, depending on the weather.
Yes.
Because you've got 400 tons of crane up there.
I think they're still using sails about then. So there were some sail ships.
Oh, there were some, not many.
No.
I mean, I don't think they were building them, at least to any great extent.
The steam was in, you know.
Yeah. Oh yes, steam was definitely in. But they had quite a good trip out. I've seen the reports in the papers and so on, and they had a few bad days, but basically not many.
Wow.
Her sister ship, the Rapaki, which came out about 3 months beforehand. I mean, this one took 82 days. Rapaki took 117 days.
That's the difference.
They had some real rough weather.
Yeah.
And they finally made landfall at East Cape, hopped down the coast, bludging coal from various settlements on the way down, went into Gisborne and loaded 90 tons of coal for the 2-day trip to Littleton, and arrived there 5 days later.
Wow. So this ship is what, 100, 200, 300?
150 feet long.
150, well, that's not a big ship.
No, and 50 feet wide. Yeah. I mean, I went on the trip down to Littleton in 2009 when we were towed down for dry docking, and although we had to have calm weather for going down there, there were times when we had waves coming over the decks. So in any sort of a bad sea, it should have been like a half-tide rock that just...
Wow.
Not what I would like myself.
No. So what drives this as not a triple expansion?
No, it's two compound engines.
Right.
They're 2-cylinder, high pressure and low pressure, which we'll have a look at in a minute.
Sure.
And we've got 15 separate steam engines scattered around the ship.
To run various
things. I mean, there are 2 engines up in the crane room. There's the capstans, 2 capstans, the after windlass, the forward windlass.
It's just amazing how strong steam is. And it's immediate. It's right there. You don't have to warm it. It's just bang.
Well, it takes me an hour to raise steam. But that's one thing here. The original boiler, which was a big Scotch boiler, held 30 tons of water. It took 2 days and 3 tons of steam to raise steam. 3 tons of coal, I should say. That was replaced in 1963 with a similar boiler, and that was converted to oil firing. And then that clapped out in 1980, and the Harbour Board looked to bringing another boiler out from the UK, although I don't know why, because they could have built them out here.
Yes.
Maybe it was the cost. And decided it wasn't cost effective, so they put 2 small economic boilers in, built in Dannevirke. And that's very much easier from our point of view, because it only takes me an hour. I'm flicking a couple of switches to raise steam.
Just listening to that noise, it sounds like he's re-riveting something.
He's just chipping paint.
Oh, okay.
Rust.
Rust. Would you consider this boat rusty?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, she's getting on for 100 years old, so she's probably entitled to. You know, it's a never-ending battle. You know, as fast as you clear and paint one area, you move on to another area,
like
another area.
Harbour bridges that'll go get the other side.
Exactly.
Look, can we have a look at these two engines?
We can certainly have a look at these two engines.
Well, we're going to see what makes this boat tick.
Okay. So this wee pump here, all the steam from round the ship comes back to here. When you see a railway engine chugging along, there's clouds of steam coming out the funnel. Well, that's fine. They can stop every couple of 100 miles and fill up with water. When you're at sea, you can't. Even though there's lots of salt water out there, you put salt water into the boilers, you'll plug them up in no time at all. So this exhaust steam comes back to the condenser at the back here. This wee engine pumps seawater through the condenser and out over the side, which cools the steam back down into condensate. And this pump sucks the condensate out of the condenser and puts it back into the boilers or two. It also puts a vacuum on the system, which is more efficient use of steam. You can expand it down below atmospheric pressure rather than just to atmospheric pressure. You get more work out of it. That's running ahead. And that's running astern. The steam comes from the boilers up through that central pivot there. See that big shaft there? The steam comes up through the universal joint, just there. And there's the steam pressure. Currently 85, 83 psi. So when we want to run the engines, we have to warm them up. We've just been warming them up, and we've got it set up for this main engine to work. That's got two cylinders, you see there, two pistons and cylinders. That's the main engine for the lifting cable and for raising and lowering the jib. And that's the lifting cable at the back there, and on the big drum at the back, very sternwards. And the rack and pinion is that big cogs you see there running up into the sunlight at the top.
And the big bevel gear, and then up through the screw.
And that raises and lowers the jib so that the load comes in, the load varies its distance from the centre of the crane. So it can go closer in or further out from the crane, which is critical. These are the controls which come down from the driver's cab. You see it's got universal joints on it there and a counterweight. Just there. They go back under the floor and up those big steel rods over there to the driver's cab. So the driver can alter the amount of steam coming in and also the direction in which the engines are turning.
And he sends us instructions via these lights as to what he wants to do.
That's what in the old term is called the derrick, and that's what makes the load go closer into the crane or further out from the crane, which is very important in terms of getting the reach, getting the load to move around the ship and to the right spot. But also, of course, the further away from the crane the load is, the less load you can carry. A typical kind of steam engine for 150 years, since the time of Stevenson, or after the time of Stevenson. And that gear that you see over there, this one, that one there, my finger's pointing to it, that gear there is called a Stevenson gear. It reverses the direction of the steam going in and out of the piston. You can see the pressure that we're working at, which is probably a little bit less than we would normally be working at.
I think old Scottish money that is.
We'd be working 120 psi. It's currently at 85 or 90, is it?
Yeah, 90.
Tadano have been building cranes since 1956. Tadano is the name in mobile cranes, from 2-axle to 7-axle cranes, as well as track cranes. Tadano, a great choice of crane. So if you're looking for a crane, why not choose Tadano? Tried and true. To find out more, just go to allcrane.co.nz. With me is Tim Elliott from Kepler Motors in Hamilton, and good on you,
Good to see
Tim.
you.
Maybe tell us a little bit about the vehicles you sell.
Right, well, we've got an absolutely amazing range from the GWM Haval product lineup. We start with a small SUV with the Julian, and we start from that at $27,990 plus on-road costs. We then go through that range. We have 3 models in the Julian range. We then go into the H6, which is the next size up, your mid-size SUV, and that we actually have 5 models in that range.
Wow.
Yeah, starting from $33,990.
Yeah.
So when you look at the value for money in our range, and we even have right through to a hybrid like our new car behind me here. As well as the SUVs, we have a stunning lineup of the GWM Cannon, which is New Zealand Autocar Magazine's Ute of the Year for 2020.
Wow.
Not only has it come up Ute of the Year because of its build quality, ride quality and safety, now 5-star safety rating in 2021, it is an absolutely amazing package. You don't get the harsh ride that you traditionally get in a ute, but you get all the safety and benefit of having 3-ton towing capacity, up to a ton payload in the back, but also room for your guests in the back of the vehicle if you're taking a few along with you.
With a bit of legroom.
With a bit of legroom and vents in the back so they have actually get a bit of fresh air as well.
Oh, that's marvellous. Get hold of Tim and I'm sure he'll look after you.
Look forward to hearing from you.
Fassi, an extraordinary crane manufactured in Italy. The amazing breadth of the Fassi range with over 30 models and 300,000 configurations means the cranes offered can be truly purpose-built, tailor-made to suit the needs of the customer who chooses Fassi products mainly for their quality and fittings. So when choosing a crane, why not choose Fassi? You'll be glad you did. The skipper who brought the Hikitia out to New Zealand was Captain J. Fullerton. And here's the crane being tested before coming out to New Zealand. And they're doing another test when it got here, lifting 80 tonnes. And here's a train being loaded into Wellington, and Hikitia are always unloading ships. And here's another one, unloading a ship back in the day. Rescuing a plane that's ditched itself in the water, GMC trucks. And during the war, they lifted tanks going to and from New Zealand. And there's a shunter train coming to New Zealand to go on its work. So what I'm going to do now is talk to John Ackrell, one of the owners of the Hikitia. John, I understand that this was going to be scrapped.
Yeah.
And somebody made the decision, let's get rid of it.
Yep.
And then you got involved. Tell me what happened.
Well, in 1989, the floating dock was towed away, supposedly for work in Singapore, but it actually broke up halfway across the Tasman and sank. But following the dock's removal, the harbour board needed to clean up the seabed around where it had been. You know, there were anchors and chains and concrete blocks and dolphins and Lord knows what. So the Hikitia at the time was out of service and out of survey. So they came to us. I was working for the Marine Department at the Marine Division at the time, and asked if they could get a temporary certificate to allow the Hikitia to do the work. I wasn't involved with that, but 2 of my colleagues went down and crawled all over her and decided yes, she could have a temporary permit, and asked what was going to happen to her afterwards. So the harbour board said, well, we'll be selling her and she'll probably be scrapped. And having just crawled all over, they thought that she was in too good condition just to be scrapped.
Yes.
And decided that they'd form a company and put in a bid. They wanted somebody else to come in with them, so came to me. And I, being a decent man, asked my wife, said,
how would you like to own
how would you like to own the Hikitia? And she said, yeah, okay. So we put in a bid, and in fact one of the 2 originals then decided to go back to Scotland and left the other two of us, myself, my wife, and Bob and Mary Box, holding the baby, as it were.
Right.
So we put in a bid, and we know it wasn't the lowest bid, but the highest bid, but we were the only ones who were prepared to keep her in operation.
So was it always parked here, or was it parked somewhere
No,
else?
it's been parked at various places around the harbour. I think when we bought her, she was birthed over at King's Wharf.
Right, right. So this is pretty close to the museum, which
Yeah.
is pretty much in association with New Zealand history. It's here, it's there.
Yeah. Although we don't actually have much contact with the museum, to be
No,
honest.
I was just saying,
but even
close
so,
proximity, yeah.
before all those trees grew, the big circular window there was absolutely perfect. We were framed slap in the middle of it.
Well, so you've enjoyed your time?
Oh,
Obviously,
yes.
you're still here.
Yep. Yes.
Were the engines all tickety-boo, or did you have to do
Yeah.
much of them?
Yeah, no, I mean, we've done work on various of the machinery around the ship at the various times. That happens. I mean, no machinery will go forever,
No.
just by itself. But no, it's been pretty good.
And you have a team of volunteers? Or
We have a team of volunteers who help
Yes.
and do good work.
And how do you get funding for all of this?
Well, Malcolm's the one in charge of funding.
Oh, yes, yes.
We've had funding from lotteries, pub charities, and various other organisations.
Sure.
And of course, at various times we've done paid work for various
Oh, okay.
people.
Right.
And that money all goes back into it as well.
Yeah. So this actual crane, I'm just thinking, is it set the way it's now, the angles that it's set so it can lift, or can you lift this way, lift that
No,
way?
you can raise and lower the jib. That's the big luffing screw that I think your wife
Oh, right.
is going to have a look at.
Yeah.
And of course we can slew 360 degrees.
Wow. And that's all from the box halfway up.
Yep, that's the driver's cab.
So he's got levers and pedals.
It's like a big railway signal box.
Oh,
The old railway
yes,
signal
yeah.
boxes, big quadrants and levers. It's quite hard work hauling in
Yeah,
those.
I'm sure it is. Yeah. And so, what would be the heaviest thing that you know of that's actually lifted?
Well, we were told that during the Wahine salvage, which this obviously had a big part in bringing all the bits in when they finally had to break up the wreck. They reckon the last big bit weighed over 80 tons anyway, but they thought, well, let's see if we can lift it and take it into shallower water for cutting up. So they started lifting, and then the deck edge was getting close to the water, and the other side of the crane was starting to lift off the roller path. So they decided that was it and took it in shallower and put it on the deck. And they reckon when they cut it up and brought it in individual pieces, that the original piece had been about 120 tons, which is somewhat over her official capacity.
I mean, it's a real mean hook that's hanging on the front.
Oh yes. I mean, we've lifted 100 tons, which is 25% overload as a test lift.
Wow. And so what I understand of cranes, their peak capacity is when they're straight up and, well, as far as they can go, straight down. The further out you go, the less
you can lift. But even so, at full outreach, we can still lift 15 tons.
Oh, okay.
Which is still a fair bit.
I saw a photograph of this lifting buses. Had a bus and a strop and putting them on the wall. Did they come out of a ship, or how did that happen?
Oh, that was brought out of a ship.
Oh, okay. The propellers that actually drive this, when did they stop doing? Somebody said this doesn't propel itself.
They haven't. She hasn't been in survey for self-propulsion since about 1980.
Oh, okay. That's a while. That's 42 years ago.
Yeah.
42 years ago.
42 years.
Well, you sort of think 1982, it wasn't all that long
Yeah.
ago, but then you say it's 42 years, you go,
Yep.
what? Yeah, so it's got to be towed.
Got to be towed now, yes.
So do they cooperate with you,
yes.
the tow people? No problem at all? Yeah. And so they get alongside, take it out, and then...
Yep.
Yeah. So where would you want to tow it?
Well, it's I mean, since she arrived in 1926, the furthest she's been out of the harbour is either Barrett's Reef Buoy
Oh yes.
or the trip we did down to Littleton in 2009. The rest of the time she's just been around the harbour.
Oh, okay.
I mean, all around the harbour too, the Petone, Seaview.
And the reason for the Littleton trip?
That was for dry docking.
Oh, okay. Right. So they get underneath and clean the bum
Yeah.
and all that sort of thing. Oh.
Yes.
Oh, wow. So you enjoyed your time?
Oh yes.
Yes.
There have been times when sheer terror has taken over, but
Playing in 2 o'clock in the morning, how are we going to fix this or do
Yeah.
that, or where's the money coming from? Yeah, know the feeling. So you were saying before, she's rusty. Well, as you say,
Yeah.
she deserves it.
yep.
Deserves it. Yeah. Tadano have been building cranes since 1956. Tadano is the name in mobile cranes, from 2-axle to 7-axle cranes, as well as track cranes. Tadano, a great choice of crane. So if you're looking for a crane, why not choose Tadano? Tried and true. To find out more, just go to allcrane.co.nz. The Gecko Mini Crane, without riggers, designed to get into small areas and confined places, like stairs, passageways, things like that. Because they don't have a huge setup time, this saves money and time. Gecko, the crane that does all those little jobs in tight places. For more information, check out www.allcrane.co.nz. With me is Kevin, and Kevin, you have something to do with the machinery about halfway up this crane. Maybe you could just explain to me what some of that does.
That's the machinery in what we call the gear room, and that's basically 4 engines working in pairs which slew the crane around. They rotate the crane so the crane can face in different directions, and also they run the main lifting cables so the loads are lifted up and down from the block, and also they raise and lower the counter jib so we can alter the radius of the lifting of the crane.
All happens in that room?
All happens in that little room. We've got some not gearboxes, we've got gears which are worked by a dog clutch, which is just a clutch that goes slam across into another clutch, and when you want to disengage it, you pull the clutches apart.
Lever.
Yeah, and it's quite heavy, you've got to reverse them.
I think some of the old trucks used to have that system. Some of the old Leylands from the 1918, 1920.
You mean when you double declutched? No, I don't think that. This is terribly unsophisticated.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
It's not called a dog clutch for nothing.
And so the next cabin up, which is the controls, the man standing up there pulling this lever, pulling that, makes it do this, do that, blah blah blah. It all gets down to you, down to your room, down to
that's right. He's the big boss, really, the crane driver, along with the bloke on the deck controlling the loads, how the loads are lifted, and he has got big levers up there which run down through these iron rods, and they control the direction of the turning of the engine, and also the force of the engines and the velocity of the engines turning around.
So he's controlling the engines, not you, not.
He's controlling the engines. He sends us a signal to work the gears and the clutches that we're talking about.
Right. So
we work the clutches, but under his direction.
So it's a bit like the old ships where you've got those ching, full ahead, slow, and that goes to the engine room.
We've got a telegraph, but it's a bit more direct than a telegraph system.
Okay. So he doesn't have to wait 40 seconds or something for something to happen.
He could have to wait quite a while actually,
because
really? Sometimes we can't get the dog clutches to engage. You've got to spin the engine, get them in. No, spin again.
Oh, okay.
Spin.
So he's up there waiting for whatever he's
spinning them. He can spin them.
Yep.
He knows to spin them, and they engage the clutches, and then they.
Oh, okay. So lifting something is quite a mission.
It can be, but you can get it down to a fine art. It could be for a day's work. We could change the clutches maybe 100 times.
Wow. And is it noisy?
Can be noisy when they're going full bore.
Yeah. Wow. So you all wear earmuffs? Or
No,
is it-
no, oh, no, it's not
I
that
know
noisy.
back in, well, when I was working in the bush, nobody wore earmuffs.
Oh, well, no, we do wear
I'm
earmuffs
just-
if we
I'm
need
just
to.
saying, if you wore earmuffs, you're considered a sissy.
No, that's not the case with us, but it's not so noisy and it's not so persistent that you need
Oh, right,
to
right.
have earmuffs. We could check it one day, but we haven't.
No.
Yeah.
And so that machinery is run by this machinery at the back of the boat.
That's run by the boiler, the steam from the boiler
Yes.
in the middle of the ship.
Oh, okay. So that's all.
It goes either through the centre of the ship and up through that universal joint that we spoke about, or it comes back to the drive engines, which are the engines that drive the propellers.
And it's all pressurised, and
It's about 120
and you
psi.
can't hear that. Tss.
We do hear this.
Oh, okay.
We do hear this.
Right.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And quite a bit of steam escapes in the winter. You can see it flying around.
Yeah. So you're watching your machine. You don't look at any. You're not looking out a window at a low band lifting. You're looking at the machinery that's doing.
I do watch what's going on, and then I understand fully the instructions that come down.
right,
There's no
right,
ambiguity.
yeah.
What comes down is an instruction to us through the lighting system that we showed you.
Sure. When have you been here when it's lifted something?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow,
This anchor has been lifted several times.
that's a big anchor.
It used to be down there under the stern of the ship, under the propellers. Been lifted out, put on the foredeck, done all the conservation work, and it's been brought back here to take it away from our working area in the front and the bow of the ship.
Yeah, so that crane does the big
Yeah,
circle,
rotate it
sticking
right
out
around
this
here,
way,
yeah.
sit it out that way.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I was talking to John before. Is it a ship or is it a crane?
A ship
Yeah,
with a crane on it.
just
It's-
happens, happens to have a crane on
I
it.
think the word is crane ship, so it's CS
Oh,
or
right, so it's
CSS,
CS.
crane steamship Hikitia.
There you go,
CSS.
folks. You learn a new thing every day.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Good on you, Kevin.
Righto, thanks
Yep.
Bill.
Thank you
It's
very
interesting
much.
to meet you.
Excellent. Well, I just found this absolutely fascinating. All how the crane works, how the boat works, how everything works, and the crew of guys that are on this boat as volunteers, wonderful people. So we're going to come here again. We're going to see this crane pick something up and slew around and do its thing. But I just thought it'd be great, just a little program to introduce you to the Hikitia here in Wellington.